morning, children of God, and welcome to worship. I take this off safely and keep it for when I go outside and run into more people. You get used to wearing masks? Do you have a favorite one yet? I have a couple that my friends sent me that are really colorful and nice, so if I have to wear one, I'd rather wear one like that. Should we get started with worship? I got new matches this week because it was so hard to light the candle last time. Let's see if it works. Should we be ready to be in the presence of Jesus? That was a little easier. Do you even remember the song that we used to sing when we were together to start worship? This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We still have lots to be happy about. Here we are, one more Sunday past Pentecost into ordinary time. Still not quite halfway there, but to the next season, but it's coming. I noticed that some of the flowers that I associate with late summer are starting to come out. The black-eyed Susans, the yellow ones with the brown centers. And I've been hearing more cicadas, which is a sort of late summer thing. The days are starting to get a little bit shorter, so I hope you're still enjoying summer, even though it's really, really hot. Let's get started with our story. Our story today is another story about Paul. It's the last Sunday in July, and it's our last story that's specifically about Paul. Paul had gone all over the Greek and Roman world, the area known as the Mediterranean, which is Latin for middle of the earth. He went everywhere that he could, and everywhere he went, he talked about Jesus. And he talked about how Jesus was still alive, and he talked about how Jesus was bringing the kingdom of God, and how that the believers could become a new person and be acceptable to God and be part of God's kingdom. Everywhere he went, he said that, and sometimes it worked out really well for him, and sometimes it didn't. Paul had more adventures than almost anyone I know during his career as a preacher. He was shipwrecked, he was bitten by snakes, he was beaten up, he was arrested more times than I can count, and still he kept doing his duty as he saw it to tell people about Jesus. Well, eventually, Paul ended up right back where he started from, in the kingdom of Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, the city where it all started. And when he got home, he wasn't exactly welcomed warmly. Some of the disciples were still not sure that it was the right thing for him to be telling all the non-Jewish people that they could become Christians, especially without having to follow the Jewish laws. The Jewish leaders in the temple had heard rumors about how Paul was working and teaching and creating new Christians everywhere he went. They were not happy either. And eventually, these Jewish leaders went to the Roman authorities and said, this guy's back in town. He does nothing but stir up trouble everywhere he goes. He's telling people all kinds of crazy religious ideas and getting them all shook up and all excited. You need to arrest him before he does something here, before he gets the people upset. Well, the Roman leaders thought about this, and they thought, but what can we charge him with? He hasn't really even done anything. I mean, he knows he's in the temple teaching, but the Jews are always in the temple teaching. Why is he different than anyone else? But eventually, he was brought before the Roman authorities, and they talked to him and said that the Jews want you arrested. They even want you killed. What have you done? Well, that was just an opportunity to preach for Paul, and so he told them. He said, well, I've said things that they don't like, and then he told them the whole story from the beginning to the end about how Jesus had come to save the world and how Jesus had come to reconcile the people back to God, and how that they could become Christians too. And the governor at the time, his name was Felix, said, I don't know what to do with him. He really hasn't done anything wrong. And so he said, I know, I'll take him to the governor down in Caesarea. Now, Caesarea was still in Israel, but a port city. It was a little further away from Jerusalem. And I'll take him to the governor there, and I'll see what the governor has to say. Well, meanwhile, the governor there was named Festus, and Paul appeared before Festus, and basically the same thing happened. And he said that he talked to Festus. He told Festus and his wife, who happened to be Jewish, all about Jesus. And Festus thought that this was kind of crazy talk, but he also didn't think that he had done anything to be arrested for. But the Jewish leaders and the Roman leaders in Jerusalem didn't want Paul back in Jerusalem stirring up trouble. And so Festus said, well, what should I do? Should I just go ahead and arrest you? I mean, should I put you to death like the Jews say you should? And Paul said, I really haven't done anything to be put to death, but if you need to, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to do it. I'm not going to stop talking about Jesus. Festus didn't know what to do. And he finally said, I think I'm just going to have to turn you back over to the Jewish authorities. And Paul said, no, I don't think you should do that. I am a Roman citizen. I'm a citizen of Rome, and that means that I have a right to be tried by Roman authorities. Well, the Roman authorities at that point was Festus, and he didn't really want to be turning Paul loose. And so he said, are you appealing to Caesar? Do you want to appear before Caesar? And Paul said, if that's what it takes, then yes, I will talk to Caesar. Now, Caesar was like the big governor, the emperor of all of Rome. Well, Festus said, I have an idea. The great king of this part of the world, Agrippa, and his wife Bernice are coming to visit. Why don't you appear before them and let them decide what is to be done with you? And so Paul said, yeah, okay, I will. And so came King Agrippa and his wife, and Festus brought Paul before them and said, this guy's a troublemaker. Not quite sure exactly what he's done wrong, but he stirs up trouble every single place he goes. That alone is worthy of some kind of punishment, but probably not death. I don't know what to do. The Jews want him put to death. If I let him go, he's not going to stop talking about Jesus. He's not going to stop telling people about Jesus. What should we do? Agrippa said, who is this Jesus? And why do you not stop talking about him? Well, to Paul, that was just an invitation to tell this story one more time. And so he did. Paul said, King Agrippa, let me tell you about this. Way back in the early days of my people, there was a man named Abraham who was called to be a follower of God. And God promised all kinds of wonderful things to his descendants. And then we had a beautiful kingdom under his descendant David, and that fell apart, and we couldn't keep our lives straight. And finally, God sent his son, because people wouldn't listen to the prophets, Jesus, to show us how to live. But they put him to death too. But he rose again on the third day, and he went back to the Father, but he told all of us to tell everyone his message of love and concern and becoming a follower of Jesus. And Agrippa said, wait a minute. Are you trying to make me a follower of Jesus? And Paul said, I want everybody to be a follower of Jesus. You can listen to me, you can decide what to do, but you, Festus, everyone should be a follower of Jesus. Festus said, Paul, your great learning is driving you insane. Paul said, I'm not insane. I saw Jesus on the road to Jerusalem. I want everyone to be a Christian. Festus said, Agrippa, they sent him away. He said, let's just talk. Agrippa said, I can't find anything wrong with him. Festus said, I can't find anything wrong with him. Agrippa said, if he hadn't been so stubborn and, appealed to Caesar, we could just let him go. But let's send him to Rome and see what Caesar wants to do. So they put Paul in a boat and sent him to Rome. And of course, he didn't get there just, without any problems, because he was Paul, and Paul always had problems. There was a great storm. He was shipwrecked. It was really bad. He finally got to Rome, and the Bible tells us for 2 whole years in Rome, while they were trying to decide what to do with him, he was able to live in a rented house and every day to teach people more and more about Jesus. Now, the funny thing is, at least it's funny to me, is that's where the book of Acts ends, the first history of the Christian church. It just kind of ends in the middle of the story. We know from later sources that Paul was eventually killed under the Emperor Nero, and about 35 years after Jesus was killed. And that the church continued to grow. We have many, many letters that Paul wrote to the churches that he had started that we're going to be studying next month. But the Bible doesn't tell us that. It just stops in the middle of his story. People wonder why it just stops in the middle of the story, the book of Acts. But I like to think that it stops because it's a story that hasn't ended yet. Even today, we are still the church that Paul started, Paul and the others, waiting the return of Jesus, spreading his word, and doing whatever we can to make the world a better place while we wait. We'll be talking next month about some of the contents of the letters that Peter and Paul wrote. But those are stories for another day. Story on the altar. I hope some of you are doing the Vacation Bible School that Mr. Sam has been working on. I'd love to see some pictures of some of your projects. This is our last time in July to be together. Next month, a whole different thing. I hope some of you will be participating in our worship videos. And until next time, we'll blow this candle out and say goodbye to the book of Acts for this year. But we'll be back next year in the summer to learn a little bit more about the early church.